Hey guys, what's up? Coming at y'all with another review. Now, if you're new to the channel, you probably haven't seen this car before, but if you are a fan of the channel, you've been following this for a little while, then this is none other than my friend Austin's 2006 Monte Carlo SS. But enough about me blabbing, let's get into it. Now, this Monte Carlo comes with something very special, an LS4 5.3 liter V8, which is funny considering that this thing is front wheel drive, especially with the styling and its ties to NASCAR. You would think, why wouldn't it be rear wheel drive like the Camaro or the Corvette? But the questions don't stop there, because this car also came with a very weak 4-speed automatic transmission. It's funny because actually the stronger transmission got put into the North Star V8 Cadillacs and in the later years the Pontiac GXP. Another cool thing to note about this Monte Carlo is that it's fast. It's very cheap LS power, and that's why a lot of people love these things. That, and also some people really just fall in love with the styling, because it does look like a stock car, especially the year or two before this one with the more rounded off headlights. Why, GM? Why is it front wheel drive? Out of all the things that you could have made front wheel drive, you shove something with a really good motor and a really good platform. I mean, and really good styling. Honestly, I like the styling of these things, especially like the rear end. It looks straight up like a NASCAR. I mean, you know, anyone would love to drive around a street NASCAR. But there were just so many problems that GM just decided to overlook. Because it just seems like with this car, because again, this car was made right before, you know, the bailout of 2008. It seems like with this car, the executives decided to just do a giant line of coke and said, screw it, let's do that. Which, I love it because of it. It's so weird. But it just makes you question so many things that they did with this car, because it's wasted potential. It could perform way better than what it does, and it could be way cooler than what it is, but because it's front wheel drive, they put a glass transmission in it, it was doomed from the start. Speaking of transmissions, Austin, the guy who owns this car, he's on number 3. Like, he's dumped 3 transmissions into this car. Now, as a side note, when I say he went through 3 transmissions, the original transmission lasted him 140,000 miles. Or, lasted up until 140,000 miles. Which this thing now has 146 on it. And you might be wondering, well, what the heck? What happened to the other 2 transmissions? Well, I say he went through 3 transmissions, but he had to get it rebuilt multiple times now. And apparently lasting anywhere past 100,000 with this transmission, again, paired up to this engine, it's a miracle, really. Another reason why I think this car was kind of stunted from being really a cult classic or a really, really good performance car, apart from it being front wheel drive, is traction control is always on. And I guess that's just, you know, an early 2000s car thing, but the traction control is always on, because you can sit here all day long and like put your foot to the floor in first and just rev the piss out of it, but it will not spin at all. I mean, it will spin if you're moving, it'll do a rolling burnout, but in terms of just a standing burnout, it's hardwired. Ready? That was a very fun 60. Moral of the story is, if you're going to get one of these cars, get the T80 transmission, not the T65, which this thing comes with. Because they're both 4-speed automatics that came in front-wheel drive GM cars in the late 90s, early 2000s. But the problem is with the TH80, it was just way beefier. It could take the horsepower. And the funniest thing about the TH80, it only came on, again, the North Star Cadillacs, and the highest horsepower that one of them ever received, or that the transmission was ever made it up to, was a Pontiac GXP, which I only made 275. This thing makes 303 horsepower and 325 torque. And a transmission that's only really meant to take low 200s, you can see why he's had to put in a few transmissions. It's just a design flaw that GM should have addressed. They should have put in the better transmission from the start, but they decided to be cheap, and because of that, this really is the Achilles heel of this car. Speaking of things that GM did wrong with this car, the starter is also right underneath the exhaust. It's so ridiculous to get to, where, and again, we like to try and do stuff ourselves, but we just decided, nah. When Austin got the transmission fixed, he decided to get another starter because his was starting to go out, and the guy tossed it in there for him. But it's one of those things where, because it is, again, an LS, it's a traditional V8, there's a lot of things that they had to work around with it being front-wheel drive, which honestly, if it was the traditional rear-wheel drive setup that they put, again, in the Camaro and the Corvette, you would have bypassed all of these problems. Because front-wheel drive, forget about cornering. Like, cornering, this thing doesn't know the definition of it. It doesn't even know what it is. It can't even spell it. I mean, what can you expect? This thing's a front-wheel drive V8. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Because it cannot go around a corner more than 35 or 40 miles per hour, or else you're just going to oversteer. I mean, it's so hideously bad. Like, even with traction control on the single turbo, which that's impressive in its own right, but then again, you made an LS up to anything and it'll spin tires. But with this car especially, it is the red-haired stepchild of LS cars. Because again, it came with such a great motor, but it was paired up to such a shit transmission. And again, the body is good. There's a lot of things that you can like about this thing, apart from the dash, which is peeling up a little bit. And again, it's very, GM in the early 2000s, as in plasticky stuff everywhere. But again, Austin 2 years ago paid only $6,000 for this car, which then he had to dump $3,000 into getting a transmission. But we're just going to overlook that. We're going to chalk that up to maintenance. What?
You love that.
Well, I mean, again, it'll spin them. Like, yeah. If you mat the gas and just, like, if you're from a dead stop and you just crank the wheel and mat the gas, light them right up. But again, that's what an LS will do. And there's another problem with this car, again, speaking of maintenance, is that in order to take out the battery, you have to take off one of the little, like, cross brace roll bars in the engine bay. And also, you can't really change the thermostat yourself. There's a lot of things that you can't do yourself on this car that you probably could do on a Camaro because it is front-wheel drive. Now, time to get into the fun stuff. How this thing drives, the exhaust, all the stuff that's done to it. And now you might be wondering why this car is so loud and why I have to speak up a little bit more than usual. Well, this car allegedly does not have a cat or resonator or anything. It's just straight piped to 2 Super 10s in the back. That's it. It's loud. But with a muscle car, that's what you want. The driver's side, the paint is pretty messed up, but it was like that when Austin bought it, and he is thinking about trying to do something, either wrapping it or something to fix the paint, because really that is one of the main problems with this car. Another thing is also like the body molding. The body molding, take it or leave it. Some people love it, some people hate it. But for me, I like it the way it is right now. I feel like it needs to be a little bit lower. but that's just me. This thing was only an LS for like the last 2 years. It's rare, and I wouldn't say collectible, but I feel like this thing will soon be regarded as one of the cool, weird 2000s cars that the enthusiasts can enjoy. Problem is, it only came in automatic, but it is one of those things where it was like a shooting star. It was there and it's gone, because they're never going to make this thing again. I can guarantee you that. Now, another cool thing to note about this car is that it does have a moonroof, which it does give it a really, really nice look in photos. You just pop that moonroof up. It looks good. It does look NASCAR-ish. Is that it made more horsepower and more torque. Not by much, but granted, more than the Mustang of its time. Problem is, the Mustang was rear-wheel drive, this is front-wheel drive. So, like, you had that extra, like, go fast, but, you know, the Mustang, you can do the skid, you know. You can go the... Now, there are a few things that this thing benefits from by being front-wheel drive. Because it doesn't have a drive shaft going all the way to the back, it's so much more comfortable for passengers sitting back there. Not that you'd really want to be back there, but again, compared to a Camaro or a Mustang with a more angular shape, it's way better because this thing has that more kind of soft, bubbly look to it. Is that it actually has Corvette heads. Why? Another reason that just puzzles me about this car is that at some points it feels like they really cared about this car. Like this was their child and they wanted to make it awesome. They wanted to make it the best it could be. But then they do shit like that. I mean, they have such a great motor, such a great top end, so many good things about this car. And then what they do, they just slap a glass transmission behind it. Which isn't bad if you know you're just cruising around, but if you're gonna treat this thing like you would a Camaro or like you would a traditional muscle car, you're better off bumping it up to the better transmission, just because it'll be able to take the abuse and keep on chugging.
It'll fight you.
It bugs. Like, it's just gone. I mean, that's the thing, is that if you lay onto it, it'll just took and book. But, you know, if you just want to like be like, haha, skids, it'll do that too.
Drone master.
Yeah, there's a reason why this thing has a nickname amongst our little friend group as the Drone Master, because especially on the highway, just doing 60, it's bad. It's atrocious. Like, if you like your hearing, you don't want to be a passenger in this car, because after a good half hour, 45 minutes, you're gonna feel that shit. But another thing that I feel like would make this thing really cool that I have not seen yet is, if anything, taking a similar year Corvette or Camaro and basically just body dropping this on there to make it the stock car that it should have been, to make it look and perform the way it should have come from factory. Because right now, I feel like I'm drinking like a Diet Coke. Not sponsored. I feel like I'm drinking a Diet Coke because I'm like, yes, this is refreshing, this is good, but I feel like if I had the regular Coke, it would be just that much better. And I feel like if this thing was rear-wheel drive, you could really make use of how fun this thing is. It's fun in its own right, don't get me wrong. This thing is a lot of fun. It's fun to just rip around, it's fun to drive in, it's loud, it's obnoxious. You're gonna know when this thing is there. You're gonna know when this thing rolls up to a meet, or school, or wherever. And that's a lot like Austin, the guy who owns this. But with this car, I do feel like, again, I feel like it's just the watered down version of what it really could have been. Again, early 2000s GM build quality? Nah, fam. We make it go fast. We make it do the vroom vroom. Alright, corner test. Let's see how this thing handles. Alright. I mean, I didn't totally fear for my life. That was nice. I think I actually moved my camera around a little bit.
highway driver, this thing is.
Oh yeah, this thing, I feel like, again, with this car, straight lines and highways is where it loves it. I could really see myself like just cruising down the highway and just loving this thing because it has that get up and go to where when you mat it, you're gonna take off. That's the thing, is that like on long sweepers, this thing does fine. I mean, I really wouldn't, you can't really tell that it like pushes or anything in the corners. It's just, you know, once you get into like those kind of tight corners. But then again, I mean, that's gonna be any car over a few thousand pounds. Oh shit, power steering went out. No. That's also another flaw with this. Yeah. That's also another problem with this thing, is the power steering sometimes is just like, I'm not gonna work now. But it's like, you know what? It's a flaw with this car. It's just kind of a working feature, but you get over it. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.